I'm going to be 18 years old one time. I'm going to have this college decision one time, like make it count. Fight for something greater. That's something that's stuck with me, It's like I'm over here complaining about like my car not working right, but those kids over there, they're happy with the very little things that they have, So that's something something that I hope will never like that shockingness, that sting won't ever fade. For many people, the biggest fear that I think they might have to live 50, 60 years of your life and then look back and be like, what was I doing? I wasted all that time. And for the first time, I think I ever realized, but I'm sure it has been before, my father was there crying. That was a very big moment for me. Don't be afraid. You flew thousands of miles to go to another place to proclaim the gospel. That at that point in time, when you spent all the money, all the time and the effort, and you got over the sickness and you fought all that, is that the point where you're going to chicken out, or are you going to follow through with it and you're gonna expand and you're gonna do whatever you can to inspire these kids? One of the big things that everybody walks away from is the worship. Unfortunately, it's a rare time when you could hear that many teenagers like sing and worship their hearts out and proclaim the name of Jesus. Everyone next to you is just like singing, and like they would hug each other and they would start praying. Hey, this is the beginning of either an amazing life around Christ you'll build with a good family, or the beginning of means to your end.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Make Your Life Count, the podcast produced by Charity Cup. And just as a reminder for you, we do this every episode. The reason it's called Make Your Life Count, Make Your Life Count is the motto for Charity Cup. And we decided to name this podcast that because the conversations we're having is meant to inspire you to make your life count. And we believe as Charity Cup that the way you make your life count is by investing in God and people. And because those are the only two things that are eternal, like people's souls and God, obviously. So to make the most out of your life, invest your life in God and people. So on today's episode, we have a little bit of a unique take on the episode because we have a person that is a good friend of mine, I should say. I'm also very good friends with his dad. But we wanted to kind of introduce sort of maybe a different segment into the podcast, aiming to bring on more young people because I believe they have some really cool insight they can share, inspire other young people to, to make the life count, and that's what the discussion is. So, without any further ado, I want to welcome to the podcast a friend of mine who I've gotten to know through just hanging out with different friends within Charity Cup and outside, also on mission trips, and I've become very fond of. Please help me welcome the podcast, Jacob Iuga. What's up, man?
Yeah. How's it going? Long time no see. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It really is a privilege.
So, Jacob, I think you're graduating soon, but recently I think you had a birthday, which I wanted to say happy birthday. The graduation, I guess it's premature, but you're there. I mean, right? You're just about to get over the finish line.
People keep asking me how it feels to be 18 and to be an adult now. And believe it or not, I felt a little bit of a change. It was a lot more, felt all of a sudden now like things were real, like no more dilly dallying. It's time to like put a foot down and look forward in life. It was a little stressful. Nothing I wasn't able to or am going to be able to handle.
So in a way, that's kind of what I want to talk about on this podcast. Is that, like I said, this is a little bit of an unusual podcast. Many times, we're kind of talking to people and looking back. In your case, and like I said, maybe this is a series that we can start with other people. You guys, you're kind of looking forward. We want to look forward. We want to look back a little bit because I want to ask you some of that. But maybe in this case, we're really going to be looking forward, which I think is kind of different. Um, and you and I kind of discussed this briefly, but I don't know if do you have an idea, and based on that kind of that day, on your birthday. I know something special happened. Um, what are your? I guess I should ask, what are your plans moving forward? If you can share that with the audience, and then maybe we'll go back and understand how you came upon these plans.
Yeah. My plans are to go to college. I weighed heavily between the decision of doing 2 years at a community college and taking classes at home, and then transferring to a college to get the rest of my classes done, and then graduate from that college with a degree. And then going to 4 years of a college, and just like getting the standard college experience where you go freshman year in the dorms and you basically grow up from that point on. I'm going to UNC Charlotte, which is a college about 2.5 hours away from here, for the major so far right now. I know people like changing them while they're in college. Business and forensics, which is business and forensics, artificial intelligence, which is business science mixed with artificial intelligence. My dad is a little bit of a artificial intelligent nut, and he's drilled into my head since I was young that artificial intelligence is the future. And I've come to believe that too, with everything that's some stuff you can't trust in the internet now because it's taking over so much. So I believe that like getting a foot through that door is probably a good decision for my future.
Yeah, I mean, whether we like it or not, I mean, it's the technology is here, pluses and minuses, absolutely. Okay, so it sounds like there's going to be some major changes in your life coming up pretty quickly here. So you're moving away, you're not staying at home.
Yeah.
Is that I mean, are you excited? Are you nervous? What's the feeling?
When I was deciding for this college thing, there was, like I said before, there was two options. I could either do the 4 years at the actual college itself, or I could do 2 years here at home at a community college, like do online classes and stuff like that, or transfer 2 years there to get the final degree. Um, and the options of both of them, I was for the entire part of my high school life, I was leaning all the way towards of staying home another 2 years, hanging out with friends here, keeping this sort of church community lifestyle that I have going on right now and not moving out. And recently, like really recently, in the past 3 or 4 weeks, it's become apparent that the better option is actually to go to the 4 years. So I'm definitely nervous. I don't know. I don't know exactly what to expect. People say all sorts of stuff about college. Some people had great experiences. Some people had bad experiences. I'm hoping for an amazing experience. I'm hoping God puts some like major opportunities in my lifetime in college where I will hopefully realize and take advantage of it. So
Yeah. Yeah, man. I remember back in the day, there was definitely some tough decisions to be made at your age. I kind of was having the same dilemma. I really wanted to go away to school. In the end, I opted from staying home. Initially, I tricked myself into saying, well, it's only for 2 years and then I'll transfer. I was actually going to go to Liberty. And
wow,
my dad, in the end, my dad kind of, I don't know how I came up with the decision, but it was kind of like I eased into it. Like, let's say, let's just try 2 years at home and then I'll transfer. And then that 2 years, I ended up saying, hey, I'm just going to stay here. A cool part is that I think if I had gone away to college, at the very least, I would have not been involved in Charity Cup, at least, in the beginning part of it, because I think, yeah. So by staying at home, I would say Charity Cup uh, came to be, at least from my end, my standpoint, because otherwise I would have been gone. So that I know that's an interesting. It's a tough decision, man. At your age, it's not easy. I as beautiful and as awesome as that time was, in many ways, I don't want to go back to the period of uncertainty and trying to wrestle with God, figuring out what He wants me to do. Let me ask you
yeah,
this before we kind of dive into maybe how we even know each other. I wanted to see if there locally where you are right now. Are you currently involved in a youth group? Are you involved in the ministry? Like you said, there's definitely some things that tie you down. Can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. One of the biggest things that wanted me to keep me here is the youth group ministry. I go to a mega church. Despite what some people might say, I really enjoy it. They've got multiple campuses, hundreds and hundreds of kids, and there's a group of about 10 or so guys that I've grown up with from probably sixth grade, maybe even younger than that. We've been going to the same youth group together, with the same youth group leader. And those 10 guys, I mean, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours with them, and I hang out with them constantly outside of church as well. And we've been going to camp for many years. So like to give up on to give up on them is, I mean, I'm sure we'll still continue to be friends, but feels like when I move away to 4 years, I'm gonna grow to be a different person than they're gonna grow to be. Hopefully both in this direction of God, but we're gonna become different people. And then it's hard, to rekindle a relationship eh, after 4 years. I know adults find that more easy, but 4 years for me is a lifetime.
Yeah, those are definitely definitely real issues to think about because as much as you say, well, things are not going to change, they are going to change. You're going to make brand new friends. They're going to make new friends. But anyway, curious. So what makes this youth group experience valuable to you, or the friends that you made? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um when when you when you make friends when you're younger, in elementary school and middle school and high school and stuff like this, you're friends with them because you're just sort of in the same atmosphere as them. You like the same things, but you don't necessarily have the same goals. You just see them every day at class. You like playing with whatever the same toys or having the same hobbies and stuff like that. Um, but what made these group of guys like such a powerful friendship, such an amazing thing, is that we all had the same goal. So it didn't necessarily matter too much, like how much fun we were individually having with each other, how much hangout time we got. We were all working towards the same thing, and that goal, it was to serve Christ. That goal to serve Christ was what sort of kept us together in a way, because you can have friends that are around because you're a fun person, or you can have friends because you got like money, or you have friends because you have like a cool toy. Um, but like if you all focus on the same goal, it doesn't necessarily matter what that other person has or who they are. You will bond together through that same goal, and you will fight for that same goal, which is to serve Christ in that point. So that's what made him such a strong, like, powerful bond.
So you're saying besides sort of the fun part, which, hanging out, you're saying that these guys kind of are a great influence in your life and vice versa, which is probably really important. I mean, so yeah, that's really awesome to hear because I think a lot of people somewhat take that for granted, but I don't think it's that easy to find like really good influence around you nowadays. Yeah, so I remember back in the day, one of my best friends moved to Texas from Detroit, and we vowed to stay in touch, and we did for a while. We would call each other every 2 weeks. That was the deal. Back then, it was calling, it wasn't texting and video. Now it's a little bit easier, and we did for a while, but it's just not, obviously it wasn't the same. He ended up moving back to Detroit, where I was from, but it's just, it was tough. So but you'll make awesome new friends. So, yeah, yeah, cool. Well, thank you for sharing with us. So, one of the places you and I kind of met. So, I've obviously known you for a while because I know your dad, and you're a little kid when we would stop over even when you guys lived in Chicago. There's some really fun memories of of you. I'm not gonna go into it on the podcast. There's like this episode where I'll never forget. But anyway, but one of the places where I got to know you a little bit was when we went to Tanzania together, which I thought was a really impactful experience for me. And I was curious, how was it for you? Was that the first time you ever been on a mission trip, or maybe a mission trip to that extent?
Um, that was definitely the first time I've been on a mission trip to that extent. The first time it really was a mission trip. I've helped out in with the community in several other areas, but it was that time, you spent, 2 weeks overseas. That it was mind blowing. It was eye opening. It was the cultural differences, the the difference between the world we live in versus the world they live in, and to see that like God's providence is over them and as well as over us. It was eye opening. It made a it made me have a little bit of more of a yearning and want to serve others.
So I know part of the time you were there, and unfortunately, we were actually in the same building together, right? But you got sick, right? So that was kind of a bummer I felt for you because you were kind of stuck in the side for a while. But I'm curious, so since this was your first trip, I'm curious what went to your mind as you landed in this unknown country, obviously much, much different than our own. So what was your first impression?
My first impression of the country itself, I've never. We went to Tanzania, and I've never been there. I've heard stories and seen movies. People mention that's where the Lion King uh, animated movie is sort of set at. So I sort of expected like the fields and the mountains with like the different lions and stuff. But all of that's like a sort of kid's idea of Tanzania. When I got there, it was very real.
Yeah. Yeah,
A
right.
lot of people, a lot of people, and a lot of poverty. It uh, it was shocking, the big difference. The difference between them having no paved roads and we have paved roads. That's just something we just take for granted. It was I came with a sense of like okay, like I'm gonna have to do whatever I'm called to do, no matter really what it takes. But when I got there, like really set in, it was like, hey, like these people need help. These people, God, God put these people in your path, and you're gonna have to put in the work.
So once you got there, because that was an interesting sentiment for me too. I've never been to Africa slash Tanzania. So that was my first. I've been on mission trips on many, but this was definitely different. Even just driving there was very different than other places. But I was curious, what was yours? I know we were all divided in teams. What was your job, or what job were you taking on kind of before you got sick?
Yeah. The job that I was so at the very beginning of the trip, I was all hype. I was excited. I wanted to teach the kids there how to play American football because I'm an American football player. I love that sport. Hundreds of hours on the field. It's what I really love. So I wanted to teach them how to play that. So I talked to Adi, and he said I could bring a couple balls and teach them how to play flag football. So like that's where the mindset was at. I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna get a bunch of kids together. I'm gonna teach them the rules,
Yeah.
and we throw the ball around and stuff like that. I was more on the sports side, like more of like helping the kids in the schoolyard, playing volleyball, playing soccer, teaching them how to play. I did help in the Sarah House, which was the organization of the disabled kids. I did go over to the I don't recall the name, but it was the house with all the kids, the
Like the
orphan.
special needs, right?
Yeah, it was the special
Yep.
needs, and there was the orphanage. I spent more time, I think, at the orphanage center, just playing around with the kids, just having a good time. I had the moms there braid my hair. So it was more of me just like being around, laughing and having a good time, and then doing sort of the heavy lifting, transporting items around the camp itself. But like the mindset was like I'm there for like muscle and the sports.
Well, so basically, if you hadn't and you had gotten sick, you were gonna be, I guess, a coach, right? Because I think all of us got different roles, right? I didn't get involved in the sports, but a lot of it had to do with sports. So for people that don't know, essentially this big campus we went to was divided up in different sections. Um, on that campus, it was a base called by Campus Crusade for Christ. They had a big school where a lot of kids were on there. A lot of them, some of them were Christian, some were not, but the school was Christian. So we got to actually interact with a lot of these kids from that school as well as from the town, right? So we have a few different sort of departments. Somebody that handled they went to the orphanage, some that went to the special needs clinic, some that basically focused on volleyball, and some that focused on soccer. So they're like coaches for the kids. I assume you were going to be one of the coaches, right?
Yes, I was, and I actually believe I made it out of the sickness right before, and I was coached one of the soccer teams, and I think we won silver. I have a picture around here somewhere of it, but it was me with somebody else. I don't recall who, but and the soccer team. So I didn't make it to be one of the coaches, but that was sort of the second half. It was like the soccer tournament portion, but the first half was supposed to be like I was supposed to teach them how to.
Yeah, and I remember that because I would have been happy to participate. I'm not great at it, but I like throwing the ball around, so it'd have been really cool. So you never got to do that. Can you tell us what happened? Like, what exactly? How did you get sick? Why did you get sick?
I was feeling a little like I had a scratchy throat. It wasn't like I was sick with like malaria, which was the big scare.
That was the big scare. Yeah,
We spent a lot of time preparing for malaria. We got like tested, got the pills and stuff like that. Everyone was telling me like, "Hey, make sure you don't drink this water. Make sure you don't eat that food. You know, make sure you like pay attention for the mosquitoes." The mosquitoes were horrible. You had to sleep in yeah, I don't know if you guys know, we had to sleep in these nets. So you'd sleep in this bed, and then you have like a net attached to the ceiling that like surrounded the bed.
yeah,
So you got like
yeah,
tangled up at night just to get away from mosquitoes.
yeah.
Um, I had a scratchy throat beforehand. Um, I didn't really think much of it, and I got there, and I think the factor of just like the diet change and the like instantly put in like, 13, 14-hour days of nonstop work, the body just could not fight off that like whatever virus I had. I got tested for COVID there, and I think I got tested for malaria there. Both of them came back negative. So it was just like a stupid cold that my body got, and since I was working so much, the body was kind of weak to fight.
Man, I remember I felt bad for you because, like I said, we ended up I think giving you our room, and I moved somewhere else so you can be in that same building.
Sorry
But
about that.
no, absolutely not a problem. And when you're on a mission trip, that's all you got to do. You got to watch out for your brother. And yeah, you would have done the same for me. I'm not worried about it. So, but it was just bummer because we would get up in the morning, to do stuff, and you were kind of still stuck in the room. But anyway, I know you had a sort of once you get back on your feet, we had this like major production that your dad was part of, right? I think you got to do that, right?
Yes, I did get to do that. The major production was sort of telling the story of we had about 15 children there. Well, not children, teenagers, our age that came from all over the US. A lot of close friends of mine. By the end of the trip, we were all good friends. But the idea was to tell the story of Christ um, with this group of people with the resources we had. It was it was a production my dad put on. My best friend played Jesus, or sort of the God figure. He was dressed in the white robes and whatnot. I played the devil, dressed in the red robes, and then everyone else played like the humans. And it was convincing these friends of mine to take on certain attributes that the devil tries to put in your head.
Yeah.
Like insecurities, lies, and stuff like that. And each person would be taken over by this attribute, which we had like on a piece of paper. And then the Christ figure would come and then like raise everybody up and like take away these horrible like insecurities and whatnot. And we played it on for all the school children and all the orphans and everybody involved. It was an amazing, amazing time. One memory I'm gonna hold for the rest of my life.
I mean, maybe you were in it, right? It didn't but I remember I had goosebumps when I watched some of the scenes, right? Because there was a scene where I believe where Jesus sort of puts you down as the Satan, right? Where he kind of overcomes Satan and like rescue these people, right? And I remember your dad made this very dramatic scene with lights and music, and it was all coordinated. Maybe you were in it and you didn't, but I was outside watching,
Yeah.
um, and it was very goosebumpy. Like when when that big scene happened, it was moving. I believe it had a lot of impact on a lot of people. Um, and I remember I was talking to Robert Ambrose, who's a friend of ours, right? Believe it or not, Robert got saved in one of these plays in Moldova. Similar idea. There is a similar play to what you guys put on, and he got saved during that play. He actually played in the play, and it had such an impact on him. So these do not go unnoticed, but I don't want to digress. So I'm curious, like, what was your thought serving in that way? I don't know. Was it I don't know. Maybe you thought, oh, well, I came here to do a scene. I'm just curious. What are your thoughts? What's your advice to people that would go on a trip?
Um, well, the mentality at the beginning of like, you got to do whatever you need to do. Um, that's always good to have at the beginning, and then you get there, and then you like realize like this is the actual task put ahead of you. Um, and this play was an unexpected thing. I remember my father came up to me and was like, "Hey, like, dude, like, let's do a play." And I'm like, what do you mean we do a play? How would we do like that? Like we don't have any planning for it. It's like, "Dude, just don't worry about it. We'll do a play." I'm like, okay. So we gathered all the kids together and we did it. And it was I guess it was more moving for the audience, but we practiced it for several days. So I guess it gave you guys more goosebumps. But for us, it was just like, we were running through the familiar thing, going left to right. And it had a very deep message. And but yeah, like it's don't be afraid. That's the advice I would give. Don't be afraid. You know, you flew thousands of miles to go to another place to proclaim the gospel. That's when you're gonna chicken out. Like that at that point in time when you spent all the money, all the time and the effort and you got over the sickness and you fought all that. Is that the point where you're gonna chicken out? Or are you gonna follow through with it and you're gonna expand and you're gonna do whatever you can to inspire these kids? That that would be the advice I would give. Like just don't be afraid. Take an active approach.
Let me ask you, what role do you think that a sort of trip, and maybe hopefully other trips in the future, what kind of do you think it played a role in your life, moving in, like even with your plans and future plans, or was it just an experience that came and went? I'm just curious where you're at with that.
It definitely played a role. Um Now there's me and my friends call it the camp high. You go on a mission trip or some sort of camp
Yeah,
experience. You come back and you're on fire for Christ. You're gonna read your Bible every day. You're gonna like be super kind and stuff like that. And that it definitely gave me that. But like all camp highs, they must end. And at a certain point, it started to fade. But there was something that just did not fade. It was just the amount of cultural difference. Just the shocking like those kids over there, and they're orphans and they have nothing. They're really poor, but they're still like they're just happy. They're so happy. They have some sort of happiness that like you know fight and try everything, to try
yeah.
whatever, try the money and the drugs and the billionaire statuses and all the friends and all the girls and stuff like that, and they can never find it. It's what they're looking for, and it's just to see those kids with just to be happy. Like they had chicken on their plate. Chicken is a delicacy for them.
Yeah.
It was that's something that stuck with me. It's like I'm over here complaining about like my car not working right, you know, but those kids over there, they're happy with the very little things that they have, you know? So that's just like it's something that I look back on and something that I hope that will never like that shockingness, that sting won't ever fade.
Yeah.
That's something that stayed with me for sure.
Yeah. Jacob, I think you hit up on a chord here because I remember there's only certain days we were getting protein, even though obviously we were sponsoring a lot of the food, but we were getting a lot more protein than the kids were. And we said, hey, we want to pay for this. Let's get some more protein in the diet. Like, but I remember it was a big deal, like you said, to get chicken, you know? We take it for granted. Like we get chicken every day. We get tired of chicken. We want, to them, it was like a huge deal to just get chicken. Like I remember when we left,
It's once a
right,
year.
the last day. Yeah, once a year we had this big celebration and there was chicken and we kind of took it for granted. Like, what's the big deal? But that was impacting. I think that's a very good point. Yeah, awesome. I wanted to kind of preface this because this is interesting. You had obviously you had to leave early, and I believe because you went to a camp. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking at the time, man, this must have been a camp that it really made an impact on Jacob if he's willing to leave. You flew here halfway across the world, and after the trip was already done. It's just some people were going, just to clarify for the audience, the trip was done, the mission trip was done, but some people were going on a safari or something because we were already there. But you actually took the option of just flying back home to go to this camp. And I remember thinking to myself, this camp must have had a big impact on this kid that he's willing to leave and not even go on a safari to go home for this, right? I remember Kay was telling me, "I gotta go, man. Jacob's leaving. I gotta go too. I'm so bummed because I want to go on this. He wanted to go on the safari, and we were going anyway. What What was your thought, and why did it have such an impact in your life? This camp.
Um, this, this camp played a probably the most profound role in my life, so far. This is my church, and as I mentioned before, you know, I have my 10 guys, and every year, we reunite at this camp. It's an 8-hour bus drive with the entire camp. The church is a mega church. They pay for the buses and stuff. We take an 8-hour drive up to the mountains where we have sort of a mountaintop experience. You know, we got like sure there's fun things there. You know, they got wave pools and paintballs and rock climbing and stuff like that. But this camp, it means the world to me. It really does. It's where this group of friends came from. You know, I've known them from 6th grade, but from probably 6th grade up until like 8th grade year, which is it's only 2 years. But like they were just people that I saw Sunday evening. You know, my parents, they would make me go, you know, and I would hate it every time. But my dad made me go every single time. But one year at this camp, I just had and such an amazing time. It was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had, you know? You have like, I think there's around 800 kids, 800, 700 kids that go. It's a massive camp. And just the talking to the people there and the communal, you know, you get to meet people from like this part of the state and that part of the state, you know. I would never, ever miss something like that. One of the big highlights, one of the things that everybody walks away from is the worship. It's It's a very unfortunately, at least in my mega church standards and the churches I've been to, it's a rare time when you could hear that many teenagers like sing and worship their hearts out and proclaim the name of Jesus. You know, it's just everyone next to you is just like singing and like men that like you never think they would bawl their eyes out and they would hug each other and they would start praying, you know, like moments of vulnerability. You could just tell Christ was moving through the room, you know. And yeah, it was my second you could only go up until your senior year of high school. I went to my last one already. um so that one was my second to last one, so my junior year. And I thought there was absolutely no way that I miss that camp. There's I just it's something I look forward to all year. It's a refreshing breath. And a bonus of that, I I met my girlfriend of around we're coming almost a year now at that camp, and we started talking. So if I would have missed out on that camp, I guess I felt like a lot of things would be different. I guess it's just a
Yeah.
side business, a side perk.
I mean, that was my thought. This guy must have had a pretty big impact on him to leave early from such an experience like going on a safari. Not maybe a once in a world opportunity. Maybe not for you guys, but for a lot of people, right? So I said this must have been. So I wanted to hear that story, and I never get a chance to ask you. So that's why I wanted to ask you. So obviously, this had a big impact on your life, and that now I understand why you wanted to fly back and be there for this. Because I remember Kat was even telling me, absolutely, I have to go. He has to leave. This is a big deal for him. Yeah, so that's really interesting. Okay. Uh, could you share with us perhaps maybe if you got to know Christ, how that happened?
Yeah. Um, I've grown up in a Christian household. It's something that has been in every step of my life. My dad taught me the pillars and the foundation since I was a very young age. The first time I remember praying that special prayer, that prayer, I accept God into my heart, and I truly believe that He died on the cross for our sins, and I want to develop a relationship with Him. I was very young, very, very young. That this is the first time I remember doing it. I'm sure I've done it. Sure, I did it before this. It was back in California, my like first grade, uh, somewhere around there, and I just remember sitting in the car, and I asked my dad a question like, "Why is the sky blue?" or something like that. Like just a question a kid asks. And we had a long talk, and I remember praying that prayer with him. But unfortunately, I was too young to fully understand that prayer. You know, I'm just like following my parents, just following what they what they're showing me, what they do. At a certain point in time, um, I realized that the dependence I this is years later, but the dependence was on myself, you know. The dependence was on, like the validation. It's still something I obviously struggle with. I'm human. The validation was in others. The validation was in things. The dependence was on like, hey, I could do this, like I'm not really I believe God's real. Like, like yeah, I'm a Christian and stuff like that, but I didn't really have that relationship with him, that dependence on him you know, where whatever I do, whatever I turn to in life, I have to bring him along with me, or he brings me with him. Um, but it was more of I wanted to lead at that point. And it was It was at a camp retreat. It wasn't the official camp that I'm talking about, but it was a camp retreat, a weekend camp retreat, where the speaker, up there, he made a point. He made like a lot more of a logical point, you know? He asked, he was like, "Hey, like look inward, like, would you rather have this or would you rather have that? Would you do you want to do there? Do you want to do that? Do you want to do this or do you want to do that?" And that sort of just like I had like a stunning realization right then and there. So wait, like I'm driving. I want to drive my life right now, not really God driving my life right now. And it was on that camp retreat, um, where I just kind of broke down crying. And my youth leader, Ryan and Derek, by the way, they've been with me since sixth grade. They go to all these camps. They're like second fathers to me. Um, Sat with me and told me like, "Hey, like this is a good realization, and this is not something to be sad. This is something to rejoice in." Go like 50, 60 years without realizing that their heart isn't
Yeah.
truly in the right place. And he was so proud and so happy that I realized it. And it was that point in time where I actually really meant that prayer. And since then, I've been taking every step I can, even though it may be a small step, And even though sometimes it's a step backwards, whether I realize it or not, to God, to develop that relationship with Him. Um, and I got baptized couple of years, not couple of years, about a year and a half later. It was an Easter service. And like I said, I go to a mega church, and this was an Easter service where they got all the church locations into one place. So it was a massive stadium, a stadium you normally watch like singers and stuff perform at. And they just made an altar call, you know, and it is like there's like 16,000 people there. How are you going to make an altar call? Well, like how are you going to get that many people to do it? But just in that moment, I just like I have to step out. I have to do this. Like it's a public proclaiming of Christ, and I know this in my heart, and I want to fight for this, and this is something I'm going to do. So I step out into the aisle, and I walked up there. And they actually had a formulated process. They sat me down and talked to my campus pastor, one of the campus pastors we have, and he asked me questions, and he deemed me ready to be baptized. And my father was there too, and I waited a long list of lines. I had like 5 hot tub looking pools, and I got baptized in one of them, and I got out. Uh, for the first time, I think I ever realized, but I'm sure it has before. My father was there crying. That was a
Wow.
very big moment for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I can imagine like the joy for him to see you following. Wow. I had no idea this kind of how God worked in your life. Yeah, wow. And as you said, it's probably not roses all day long, but it's a decision, it's super important decision that you made. And I think it's cool that you made it like such an young age. So, um, very cool, Jacob. How do you think that impacted your world from there on?
it it allowed for me to realize that in every step I want to take, I'm still a teenager. I'm 18 years old. I struggle with all of the same things your normal teenager would. Like validation. I want to be popular. I want to have a lot of friends. I want to like go. Ex- I want to explore. Like things like that, and it changed it from like how can I do that, or like to more of like where is God leading me, you know? Because like I was always hungry, like I want to go explore the world. I want to go do all the fun things, skydiving, go visit other countries and stuff like that. So God, that point in time, it sort of changed to like, hey, like God is leading you now, you know? So like when I come across an obstacle or a problem that seemed to be blown out of nowhere, not necessarily my own fault. Well, it is always my own fault, but blown out of nowhere, it's like what is God trying to show me here? Like where like is this the next step on the path? Like am I going off course? Like what's going on? Like is this a warning of something ahead that he's trying to tell me, or is this a warning of like I'm wandering right here? Like, and it's like a point in time where you stop. You know, you want to just take a moment to realize, hey, what's the posture of my heart? Who am I surrounded by? What am I doing? You know. So from that point on, it was sort of like I'm looking for God. Like, where's this? Where's He leading me? And especially with these up and coming steps in life, it's with a couple
Yeah.
clicks of a button, you could change your life completely, depending on where you're going.
So I'm hearing that in some ways, you became more aware of God interceding or being in your life, and you wanted to uh, pay attention to what His will was. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Versus like, yeah, I'm just gonna do whatever I want.
yeah,
That's interesting. In some ways, it's limiting too, right? Because now, in a way, you kind of want to check with God, but I don't know. Well, how do you view that? Because somebody could say, well, okay, now you have somebody else to worry about. What do you think? What do you say to that?
I'm not quite understanding your question. Can you repeat
So
that?
so right, in some ways, by kind of trusting Christ, you couldn't necessarily you kind of want to do his will, right? So it's like this extra layer of precaution, if you would. And in
Mhm.
some ways, some people might say, well, why did you limit yourself? Like, did you have to do that? Because now you have to worry about what God thinks, where I could just do whatever the heck you want, you know? Do you
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
What's your answer to that, I guess, if somebody says that? Like, what is isn't it better to just be free and not have to worry about that? Why give your life to Christ?
Giving your life to Christ from the perspective that I see it at, each person is has one ultimate goal. Every human has it, is to fill that empty hole. Every
Yeah,
human has that feeling of empty hole, which is how we were
yeah,
designed. People fill it with, drugs, money, girls, fancy lifestyles, sometimes a simple lifestyle, inner peace and stuff like that. And everyone, I mean, I see this in teenagers, like they do whatever they can to fill this hole, whatever that
yeah,
may be. Um, and this hole can only be filled by Christ. So when someone asks me like, "Hey, like, why don't you just go around and have fun? Go party, go do whatever you want." It's because that's never gonna help. Because it's because that's gonna leave.
yeah,
Because that's gonna at a certain point in time that party's gonna be over, or at a certain point in time that money's gonna run out, or a certain point in time that relationship is not gonna work, or a certain point of time that excitement, that high, that enjoyment, that trip, it's all gonna run out, and it's not gonna be there. And people are gonna come and go in your life, friends, even your family. Your parents are gonna one day pass away. Your
yeah.
siblings are gonna move away. Your friends are gonna grow apart. But there's this ultimate foundation that if you build your life on it, it'll never go away. You know?
Man, that is a powerful thing to kind of come to this realization. And like I said, I'm sorry, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, and I'm digging a little bit. We never talked about this question before, so this is really putting you on the spot. So I appreciate the response, but that is really deep, man, for a 18-year-old to come to that realization that the foundation has to be Christ. And yeah, in some ways, we may view it as, I don't know, limiting, because now I can just do whatever I want, or you have to be aware what the Holy Spirit is telling you. But I think it's also freeing that God is in control, and I don't have to worry about every aspect of my life. And like you said, people move away, people die, but there's hope now. Anyway, well, thank you for. I really appreciate you sharing that, and I I think that's really cool what you mentioned. Very cool. So moving kind of along, it sounds like so then the sort of the Tanzania experience happened after that or before that? It happened after you had this experience
Yes.
with. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, got it. So so you kind of went to serve yeah, that's really cool. Would you have any advice to other young people that are considering going on a mission trip, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, go for it. I mean, there could be complications, money wise and stuff like that. But other than that, like, go for it. You're a teenager, and why would you not want to experience other people, other lifestyles, other things, and in this experience, you're gonna find Christ. You're gonna find that foundation that everyone's trying, that hole. You're gonna fill that hole in your heart that everyone's trying to fill. And if not, you're gonna go on a cool trip, with some of your friends to another part of the country or the world, and and do it. But like, I seriously encourage, like, why not? What's stopping you? Like, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the unknown? Are you afraid of what might happen? Are you afraid of, like, if you live in fear of, like, you waste, there's a saying, you waste 100% of the shots you don't take. you know?
Absolutely.
You'll never go anywhere if you don't at least try.
I think it's incredible in a way that you're saying that because obviously you went, you got sick, right? And somebody say, "Well, I'm gonna go and get sick." Yeah, you're still encouraging people to check this out. So I think that's really cool. Or what are your thoughts?
From the bed that I was laying in, you know, like I had a bad fever, I was coughing miserably and I was throwing up and I couldn't really get up. From the bed, you know, like my my body was not doing great. Even from that point, I could still see. I could just still see that the Lord is working. That this is the time where people build up their relationships with others. People bond for life. People grow closer to Christ and they grow stronger in that relationship. Because these trips, you know, you're helping people, but what you're really doing is you're doing the Lord's work. And when
Amen.
you're doing the Lord's work, you know, you grow closer to Him. When you go closer to Him, you begin to hear His voice more. When you hear His voice more, you you begin to become more aligned with His path. You
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
you could fight the path, you know, but it's God. He's gonna
Yeah.
get you on the path one way or the other, and it's just a whole lot easier if you are aligned and running along that path rather than fighting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I thank you for that. Hopefully somebody's listening and hopefully they'll follow. We'd love for them to come to Tanzania or Moldova or wherever we're gonna go. Jacob, more recently, like I said, you celebrated your birthday. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I know your father had prepared like this special program sort of you coming to like manhood, if you would, at 18, right? There's a lot of cultures that really make a big deal out of it. I happened to glance over what kind of the challenge that your dad put out. Would you share with us how that went down? I, I thought it was pretty cool. That's why I wanted to see your
It was
perspective on it.
definitely cool. It was the day of my birthday, and I had a couple friends come pick me up from the house, and we went to go grab lunch at a nice spot. We were just talking, having fun, and then my dad, I guess one of my friends and my dad were in cahoots with each other because because he's like, hey, like we need to go, like we need to go, we need to go, we need to be at your house by
So
3.
he was like essentially they arranged this so that he would bring you home.
This was arranged. I didn't know it was arranged. I thought, you know, we are just going to hang out with the friends. So we came home. And I get out of the car and I'm walking towards the front door. And he's like, Jacob, come here. This is one of my friends. And he's like, hey, just follow me. I'm like, what do you mean follow you? Hey, just follow me. And he walks around the side of the house. And like right before we get to like around the house, the backyard, he looks at me. He's like, straighten up, smile. Let's go. I'm like, what is this dude talking about? I have no clue. I pieced together there's some sort of surprise in the backyard, you know. It's my birthday, and I walk out there, and I mean, we have like a little pavilion, like a little like brook, like wooden area where you could stand and you could play basketball and whatnot. And it's just, and I see it's my best friend who wasn't with me at the time, his older brother, and another one of my very good friends, my girlfriend and my mother, and then probably like 9 men that are standing in a like a semicircle around this one chair in the middle of the yard. And I'm like, oh, like, hey guys. And no one says anything to me. They're quiet. And like these are men, like these were the most influential men in my life at the time, you know. You know, I got like Ryan and Derek, my youth group leaders there, my uncles and my dad, and then George and Philu, who flew in from California, I think. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, like what's going on? Why is no one talking? And my dad's like, please have a seat, you know? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm looking around and I see my friends and my girlfriend. I'm like, what? I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, okay. Like I sit down and it's intimidating. Everyone's staring at you.
So
And I'm
Jacob, you're facing the half circle, I assume. They're not behind you, they're in front of you, right?
no, they're in front of me. Like
They're in
it's
front of you.
right
Yeah.
here and they're like standing like this.
Yeah.
And then my friends are standing like back here, like behind me, sort of say. Um, And I'm like, what's going on? And then my dad pulls out this piece of paper and he starts reading from the paper. And he basically starts from the beginning, and talks about me growing up and how he was a father there for you, and then how you are now 18 years old, and there's just like a set of requirements that you have to follow. It, and then each person in the semicircle, they step forward and they're like, "Hey," and they gave a little excerpt on like what I was to them, and then a little lesson, and then like I charge you with, and then X, Y, and Z. And it's like, do you accept the charge of like being here? Can I pull it up? I have it on my phone.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want this to be in the record if you're okay with it.
Yeah, of course. So uh the first person that stepped up was Derek. He was one of my youth group leaders. He gave a little excerpt, told a little story, and then he said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to live as a player in God's story and not the author of your own?" And then at that point in time, I said, "I do." Felt like a little marriage, like I do. And
Yeah.
then my uncle stepped up, and then he's told a little excerpt, and then he said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to walk in difficulty and not away from it, trusting that God will forge you in fire?" And then I don't know if you want me to go into it, but I have
Yeah,
all of them right
please.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
And
you
then
if you if you can.
George stepped up. He gave a little excerpt. He told a little bit about me. He said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to carry that weight with humility, using what God gave you to point people to Him and never to yourself?" Sort of, I did the idea of pride. And then my uncle stepped up and he said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to be a man of the word, not when it is convenient, but as the foundation of everything else above?" And then my another one of my leaders stepped up, my small group leaders, and said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to build a circle of men who will hold you accountable, never to live any part of your life in secret?" And then another one of my uncles stepped up and he said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to treat your work as a sacred calling, and build and provide with excellence for his glory?" And then Philu stepped up. He was the last. Well, he wasn't the last. He was the second to last. My dad was the last. And he said, "Jacob, will you accept the charge to be the same man in every room and care more about the posture of your heart than the applause of the world?" And each of these messages, and then my dad. Let's see if we could get to the one my dad said. My dad had the longest speech. And then he says, "Will you accept this charge to trust your heavenly Father even when you can't see him, even when the danger is real, even when the plan falls apart, and knowing that he's behind the pillar and his faithfulness will never fail?" So, I mean, these ideas are like what you build your life on, you know? And they're all getting thrown at me all at once. And each one I step up and I say, I do. I accept that charge. I do and accept that charge. So it was definitely intimidating, but like the ideas conveyed in the amount of planning I could tell my dad put into it. I mean, those important ideas are what you build your life.
You understand, I have goosebumps just listening to them right now
Yeah.
because I can imagine in some ways the weight that probably you're feeling. I don't know, I'm guessing. You're there, these guys are, much older than you. There's probably this weight they're putting on you. What were your thoughts in that moment? How how are you like accepting? Obviously, there's a little bit of peer pressure, like, of course, yeah, 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 yeah. Putting all that aside, what what was going through your mind?
It's time. There's a certain point at which you need to flip the switch where you need to start working and you need to start fighting. You can't necessarily depend on your parents 100%, and you can't depend on them anymore. I am a man stepping out into the world in 2026, and I have no choice about my
Yeah.
circumstances. or what the world is doing or what the cultural norm is, and I'm expected to hold these ideas up no matter the problem, no matter the danger, and sacrifice everything for these ideas, and then hopefully build a family around these ideas. So, like, I'm sitting in this chair and there's a lot of words. I will admit, there's a lot of words being spoken at me, and I'm trying to keep track of them all, but I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, it's time. I knew this day would come. It's time already.
Do you think part of it is obviously was to meant this put this sort of you in front of this reality that, hey, this 18 age is not a joke. Like, it's turning from being a teenager to starting life, and I have two paths: either go and sort of continue, I don't know, being young and, I don't know, careless, or like realize, I don't know, like, I feel like that's what the two paths are in front of you, and it felt like they were challenging you, take this path, like accept the response, or I don't know. It feels heavy in a way, dude. I don't know. I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I'm thinking, man, this is tough. This is heavy. Um, yeah, man. Interesting. Like I said, I had a little preview to it because Kat sent me the text and say, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, dude, in a way, this could make or break somebody, because it could be like depress you a little bit, dude. Like, I'm leaving so much behind, like childhood behind, and it's scary, and anyway, sorry, I don't mean, but I almost felt for
Yeah,
you like super challenging.
it was, is one thing to say I do to each of these charges, but it's another thing to follow through with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what
I
I'm scared.
agree. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. It's not lightly.
And when you turn an age, like when you grow a year older, and I'm assuming this is with it, like with all the years, it's like, oh wow, like cool. I'm 16 now. Oh, I'm 25 now. Oh, I'm 54 now, It's like, oh, it's just another year passing by. But it was like, this was not just like, hey, you're turning 18, good job. You made it to 18. This is like, hey, this is the beginning of either an amazing life around Christ you'll build with a good family, or the beginning of the means to your end, you know, this decision now.
You're entering a new era, whether you like it or not, in many ways, and you can enter it thinking, I don't need to do anything different, or say, hey, I'm accepting this challenge. Dude, I thought that was so powerful, and what these men did for you, I don't know if a lot of people,
No, it was
actually, I don't
amazing.
know anybody.
It was amazing.
I'm sure with that can kind of comes, hey, I'm here for you if you do stumble or whatever. I'm guessing, that was part of the message, probably. Man, I think that's a challenge. That's a document that I feel like a lot of people should hear your age, because you don't get that nowadays. It feels like social media in some ways, and like I said, maybe approval from people is like what's on the menu, not I challenge you to do this, and accept it. Anyway, thank you for sharing that, man. I think that's really profound. So I mean, I hope God gives you that wisdom and how to, like, I don't know, take that challenge to the next level, take it to the world. So thank you for sharing for that. Yeah, awesome. Um, I guess as we're kind of nearing the end of this, do you have, I don't know, so were any decisions made in your life as a sort of, because of that moment? Was there any, like, detours, or not detours, but like turns in the road because of that moment, or it was just part of the process?
Um, Unfortunately, that day was only happened 15 days ago, 12 days ago, somewhere there. Not the best with math. So that initiation, I feel like it will cause some major turns in the road, but it's too early. Like I can't tell of a time where like, hey, like changed my mind on this. The I could speak on how I thought about college from a Christian standpoint and how these ideas in a way played a role or didn't really play a role. But it's too early to say like how it changed the road because it just
Yeah.
happened.
And I appreciate that because I think the temptation here is to say, yeah, it absolutely changed my life. I feel like you're thinking about it in a profound way. Like, hey, this is still washing over me. This is, yeah, we'll see, versus, yeah, 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 but nothing really, it's just talk, So I really appreciate the profound answer. Um, Jacob, so I am curious to hear because I think it might help some people. How did this impact your decision to, I don't know, you mentioned that it impacted maybe your decision with college. How is that? Like why?
The
Or
two charges of being the same man in every room and the charge of like remaining like faithful in the word. Um within the two options of staying at home for another 2 years, when you're making the college decision, this college decision can literally change the trajectory of your whole life.
yeah,
Like right now,
absolutely.
four different options, you have four different paths of life, and you may end up who knows where.
Yeah.
Um, so it's very important to take these step by step. And I took each of these where like, hey, like, will are both of these are these choices biblical? Are there any red flags? You know, like, am I is this like, is this not a good thing because I want that there? Is that not a good thing because I want that there? Is like, is that bad? And then if the both of them are biblical, then I look at the posture of my heart towards both of those and whether or not I want that for a bad thing or I want that for the wrong thing. I have a girlfriend here. We've been dating for around a year. It's like, I want to stay home. I don't want to move away. That's not necessarily the right decision though. Um, and once you figure out those two things, and if they're all right, everything's green flags, which they both were green flags. They both had pros and cons, but none of them seemed very unbiblical. And they both seem almost fairly even with each other based on like, the pros and cons and whatnot. It was that point in time where I had to take a step back and pray. And like I had to deeply pray on God, like, hey, like which one is it? Which one are you pushing me towards? And which one are you not pushing me towards? And I heard a little bit of a calling towards the 4 years. I won't say like it was obvious because it wasn't obvious. Something just drawed me just slightly more towards the 4 years. You know?
So it became like a filter in your life, sounds
Yes.
like,
Yes.
where you filter a major decision through this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Filter it through the charges and make sure if all the charges check off,
Right.
then when you can ask God if hey, what's going on, like which one do I do? And if God doesn't respond, or he always does respond, but if you can't seem to see a choice, then that's when you could choose it based on preference. It's like, well, I don't like where I'm staying there. I want to stay here because it's closer to home, or like I have friends over there. I'm gonna go hang out with those friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. And I think sounds like there's some depth to your thinking. Very good. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that with us. Like I said, it's probably not easy because maybe this is a private moment. I wanted to mention something. I see behind your head there. There's a picture. I don't know the red.
Oh yes, I was wondering if you
Wh-
noticed
why do you have that, and where's that from? And do you know what that is?
this. I'm assuming this is from one of the very beginning moments of the Charity Cup, but this was my father's.
Yeah.
This is a schedule of all the dates and upcoming events of like what my father did. So then this is like your guys' poster, Mind, Body, and Soul, Charity Cup, Detroit, Los Angeles. And my dad had this My dad had this up in his office at one point, and he took it down for something else, and it was just like laying on the floor. And he explained to me, like, hey, this right here was my life. Like, these were the steps that God put me on. These are where I met my lifelong friends. This is what shaped me. This is what shaped you today. You live in this house because of these. You live with that because of these. You know this because of these, you know? And I thought it was so profound that, like a simple sheet of paper like this can like explain that much
Yeah.
of a moment to show like that so much power and information in this small amount. So I'm like, I'll put it up in my room on my nightstand, you
Do you,
know?
do you know do you know what's going on in that picture?
I'm assuming they're praying.
Yeah, so that's not an internet picture. That's actually a team, I believe, that was praying either before a game or after a soccer game, and somebody took that picture and we made it into a silhouette. But that is a real picture from a real event. Uh, People kind of praying in a circle. Like I said, I think they're soccer players. I think you can see they have jerseys on, because it's one of my favorite pictures. I remember it to this day, and we turned into that. So it's a very meaningful picture, man. That's why it's cool to see it there. So it's some players that are playing right before the game. So kind of what Charity Cup it embodied kind of what Charity Cup was about. So wow, that's cool. I was surprised to see it there. That's why I thought I'd mention, because I that poster stuck in my mind. We used to have that poster everywhere, one of the years, but it was a really profound picture. So, and then that's really cool. So interesting. Yeah, that's cool. It's cool that Kat shared that with you. Okay, as we kind of get near the end here, Jacob, this podcast is called Make Your Life Count. I was curious, what does that mean for you? And if you have any advice for other people your age, how to make their life count.
For many people, I believe the greatest fear to have. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't tell you for many people because I have never expressed this to anyone before, but I'm assuming it's the same thing. For many people, the biggest fear that I think they might have, you can be afraid of like worldly things or not being enough and stuff like that, or like spiders or whatever. But to live 50, 60 years of your life and then look back and be like, what was I doing? I wasted all that time. I didn't I treated that person terribly. I didn't go on that thing. I didn't say that to that person. I didn't take that risk. And that's the greatest fear
Hmm.
because you can't be like, oh, well, like, I'm going to change it. I'm going to get out of that fear because that fear it's over 50 years down your life, 50 years of your life. You can't get that back.
Yeah,
That's you. That's who you are as a person. After that, you're gone. You're dead. You don't get another chance. You have one life, you know?
yeah,
And people have the same fears. And like I've been saying, they've been feeling that to fulfill that fear, to go on trips and partying and all the girls and all the money and stuff like that. But as you can tell, like it never fills that hole or that promise or that feeling that you need to feel fulfilled. And then you're gonna look back in 50 years and you're gonna be like, shoot, like I never got that filled. I wasted all that time, all that power, all that money, all that energy trying to fill that stupid hole, but I never got filled. I wasted my time. So make it
yeah,
count. Like that's the only way you can fill that hole really is by going with Christ, of building a relationship with him because Christ will fulfill you in your lifetime. He will give you a irrational amount of joy and purpose, and he will lead you on the most profound path, the most useful path that you could possibly be. And you can look back in like 50 and 60 years from now and be like, I was doing the Lord's work. I was fighting for a greater good, a greater purpose. And once I die here on this earth, I will spend eternity with him, you know? So like when I hear make your life count, I think of don't don't be obsessed with the worldly stuff. Don't don't fight for years of your life for something that's going to fade away and never fulfill you. You know? You got one chance. You got one shot. I'm going to be 18 years old one time.
Yeah.
I'm going to be I'm going to have this college decision one time, you know? Like make it count. Fight for something greater. Find your purpose and fight for that, you know? That's what I think about when I hear make your life count.
Yeah. Wow. That is very profound. And I mean, I think it's especially meaningful because you're not looking back, you're looking forward, right? So you have this power to make that happen or not make it happen. So I pray that um that God fulfills that in your heart. And at least I think it's really cool that you want that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So um maybe as you go to college, you'll get a chance to look back at this podcast and see where you're at and what you wanted to do. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of young people, hopefully, they'll watch this and it'll make an impact in their lives and in the decisions they want to make. So that's really cool. All right, kind of the last part of this thing. It's a tradition that I have. It's called this kind of separate segment called perspectives. And it's your perspective on a few words. I show the same words, the same order to everybody that comes on the podcast, from whatever, from Adi Ambrose to you to anybody. I just want to get the perspectives on this topic. So if you want to, I'll just show you a word and the first thing that comes to mind. So just curious what you think about it. What's your perspective on politics?
Corrupt.
Okay. What are your perspectives on wealth?
Um Tainted.
Okay. What do you think about truth?
Rare.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on dating?
Dangerous.
Okay. Okay. What are your thoughts on love?
Powerful.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on marriage?
Everlasting.
Okay. What are your thoughts on family?
Love. Can I use that? Can I say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever your perspective is. What comes to mind when you think about church or you hear church
Community.
community? What comes to mind when you hear about purpose?
God.
Awesome. Here's an interesting one. What comes to mind when you hear about death?
Death. Scary.
Gary. Okay. What are your thoughts when you hear the word eternity?
God.
Okay. And then lastly, I don't know, I wonder if you're going to guess this one. What's the last word? What do you think about Jesus?
Hope.
Very nice. Awesome. Well, Jacob, I want to thank you for spending this time with us. I hope it'll be a really cool memento in time or a time capsule for you. But more than that, I think and I hope, I'm sure of it, that you've inspired a lot of young people with the discussion we had today. And as you go off to college and the rest of your life, I hope you remember the time we had together and some of the discussions we had. And hopefully, I'll have you back on the podcast to update us on where you're at, if
Of
possible.
course.
But thank you for spending this time with us, and make your life count. as you move forward with your life. So thank you.
Yes.
With
Thank
to the rest of you, I want to thank you for spending with us another episode. I hope you were inspired by another episode uh, today with Jacob. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you're young and just starting out, hope you've learned a lot of things and things that you want to implement in your life. Until next time, don't forget to make your life count. God bless you, and see you next time.